If you spend any time in Surry Hills in Sydney's inner east, you'll be familiar with the boarded-up exterior of the Hopetoun, an historic pub that was once the heartbeat of Sydney's rock and roll scene. In today's episode, Liz Giuffre peels away the hoardings to let us peek inside the Hoey, uncovering what made the place such a rich proving ground for live musicians and associated creatives during the 1980s and 90s. It's a companion piece to our last episode about the creative fringe. And this discussion, recorded at the State Library of New South Wales, takes a close look at a pre-social media world, when new music was discovered among friends, up close and sweaty, when street press told fans who was playing where, and our city's inner suburbs nourished a rich cultural ecology powered by the young and the underemployed. On stage with Liz Giuffre are Chit-Chat von Lupenstab, who's a songwriter and producer, Emily Collins of Sound New South Wales, Lex Davidson, who's Manager of Cultural Strategy for the City of Sydney, and Susie Beecham, songwriter, performer, and half of Box the Jesuit.
Just to give you a little bit of a sense of the work that has informed a bunch of this and also its connection to the library. So in 2024, I was a visiting fellow here at the State Library. Greg Ferris and I also did some work at the Powerhouse Library the year before that, exploring the legacy of the Hopetoun Hotel. And the reason we picked the Hopetoun Hotel really is we were separated by about a decade in age and about a foot in height. And we realised that we both had these wonderful memories of the same place, but they were memories that were totally different, even though we'd been to the same place. And we thought, isn't this strange that the one place can have so many different ways of sparking love, of sparking joy, of sparking different musical and cultural experiences. So we started digging, and part of that digging, it was your colleague Ross, actually, I think, who connected us with Cookie and his incredible archive of pictures. Now, Cookie, if you don't mind me saying, your filing system is eclectic, I think is... No, okay, organised chaos. So these wonderful images, Cookie first of all gave us, I think it was one little thumb drive, then another, and trying to work out how do we make sense of this. So one way to make sense of it was to go through the archive here at the State Library. And of course, the archive for a place like the Hopetoun is the street press. So, and I want to pay particular acknowledgement if Margaret Cott is here. There's Margaret, oh, my absolute idol, Margaret Cott. I want to be Margaret Cott when I grow up. And is Louise there too? Oh, Jenny, hello, Jenny. Hello, Jenny, I haven't met you yet. So I also want to be Jenny when I grow up. These incredible women who established the street press in Sydney and not only helped connect us all at that time, and I'm sure you'd remember what it was to pick up on the street, to pick up drum. Maybe you were lucky enough to feature in those pages. Who wanted Rolling Stone? I only ever wanted to work for Drum Media. That's all. These are also the archive that the beautiful State Library holds that they very kindly let me go and sit in the reading room and go through. And so to build this project and to help support Cookie's images and eventually do interviews with people and retell the stories and the spirits of the Hoey, literally went through and found the ads, every ad for the Hopetoun Hotel. See, from 1983, I think is the earliest one I found, to 2009 when the place closed. So it's something ridiculous. It was 375 issues of On the Street for those that like numbers, and that's not all of them. There are still some lost. So if you've got any under a bed or in a shed or something, please, I mean, the State Library like it when you just turn up with a box of stuff, don't they, Rachel? That's how they prefer acquisitions, I believe. Yeah. So just bring your box, bring your collection to Rachel. She'd love that. Oh, it comes in a fruit box. That's right. If it's got a bit of a mouldy film, we love that too. That's their favourite bit. Mould, libraries love mould. It's their favourite thing. So 378 issues of On the Street, 685 issues of Drum Media. A couple were, shall I say, ever so gently vandalised. So if you were in July 1991 and your band played the Hopetoun, I want to know who you are because you cut out your ad in the in the State Library's copy. So just be, No questions asked, just return it. Isn't that right, Rachel? Yeah, no questions asked. We just want that copy back. So in digging through all of this is how we've been able to reconstruct the spirits of the Hoey, is to literally go back through all of the ads and see the who's who and the who's that. What was really important to find too was that there was a massive range of genres, as you know if you were there, different musicians that played, of genders, which is really interesting. If we think back, sometimes people like to tell the story of pub rock as boys and rock and roll. Absolutely not. Huge range of different people, different sounds. To give you a little snapshot, even just analysing all the ads, I'm only up to 1995 at the moment because there's so many. There were 375 slots for music in 10 years, from 1983 to 1995. 375 opportunities just in that one little pub. And as you'd remember, that was part of the triangle. You had the Hoey, you had the trade union, you had the Surry Hills and all the rest. So incredible opportunities for live music. The other thing we found that was the most popular night for music was a Wednesday night. In case you wanted to know, it was Wednesday night. Majority of gigs were free. And great initiatives like Rock Against Work in particular, which is the thing that really struck me. Is I'm thinking, you know, the opportunity a Tuesday afternoon, sometimes a Monday afternoon, get in and listen to a very loud band, have it all over and done before the suits come back and complain about the noise, which is one of the lovely innovations of the Hoey. So that's enough about me. That's kind of set up what we've been looking at. I wanted to ask our panellists, first of all, well, let's lean into the nostalgia to begin with. Do you have a specific memory of music at the Hoey, and what makes it special for you? Who wants to kick off? Mr. Lupenstab?
Yeah. What I loved about the Hoey was all the bands seemed fully formed. You know, I see a lot of bands these days and they're shoegazing or whatever, but everybody came, like Box the Jesuit would come. No one was ever dressed like they worked, ever. They were all rock stars. They walked in, they all had different sounds, they were all powerful. Every single genre was covered. As you said, there was such an eclectic mix, but everyone brought their A game, which is amazing because it was only held at like 200 people. But
officially,
it was so foughly contested. You would fight to get a gig there, and literally to get a gig there, I rang the booker at the time every day for a month, and the only way I got a gig was to annoy him to the point where he actually said, you know, I'm going to give you a gig to embarrass you. And so we did it, and the next minute we were playing Saturday night, so fuck you, Sharky.
Hello, Tim, if you're here.
It was fully formed, and that's what I loved about that. Everyone cared. Everyone really cared. To play the Hopetoun meant, because, you know, I saw you guys, and we debated about the cake you used to bring out, whether it was a dick or a fisting ass, someone would make cakes for you. And like, we're still debating about what these cakes were. They were destroyed, and everyone, well, you said they were civil and they would eat them slowly, but everyone gave a shit, you know, and that's what I really remember about the Hopetoun, is just how much people cared, whether you're in the audience or on the stage.
Fantastic, thank you. Susie?
Okay, the cake thing, yes, it actually happened. And I can't think of another venue that would allow us to do it. I think it was our first birthday, and our roadie had a girlfriend who he said, oh, she can make a cake. I'm expecting a cake. Next minute, this huge slab of wood comes out of the back of the van with this massive penis, testicles, and he bought whipped cream for the end. And it sat at the side of stage for the set, and I'm watching the lights going. I recall people lining up with little paper plates and eating it. You recall people throwing.
I remember a fist and an ass.
Oh no, that was a different cake.
Oh yeah.
And then we had.
So we're both right then. That's
and we
good.
Had
and it was torn apart by the whole crowd.
Mirrorball vagina as well. That was another one.
Which is good because, you know, it's diverse.
It was good. So we'd do that, but I can't think of another venue that would have allowed us to do it, because the thing about the Hopetoun was, to me, it's like playing your friend's lounge room, and everyone there was so good. So I've been thinking over the weekend, I think probably maybe we played there 30, 40 times. I never recall a fight. I never recall anyone being drunk.
Really?
I don't. I just.
Thanks, Mum. I do.
But not to being obnoxious. It was. You walk in and it was always, oh, Astro Boy's here. You didn't know his name, but he looked like Astro Boy. Or Liz Taylor's here. There was a girl did look like Liz, and you'd go, they were here and everyone just give the nod. Like, it was safe. It was safe, and yes, the music was all varied and every band was great and everyone appreciated the fact you were there. You could have 3 different acts and people wouldn't harass, they'd just do it. It was like home. That's what it was.
Thank you, Susie.
It was somewhere that Mighty Mouse could be a star. Mighty Mouse could
Danger
be a star.
Mouse?
In the
That's-
book.
that's- and if you understand what that means, that's
Yes.
it's a
In the book, you can read about. We weren't sure if he was Mighty Mouse or Danger Mouse.
Danger Mouse. Sorry,
The Danger Mouse.
There you
yeah.
go. It's drugs.
Yeah,
I'll blame drugs. on
Tony
that.
Young has to his mum and dad, who again he'll come up here, but the legend of air guitar was Danger Mouse, and you knew it was a gig if Danger Mouse turned up. Absolutely incredible. So Simone Young's brother, actually, who talked to us a little bit about his legacy. But again, you're right, somebody who really just made the place so alive. Sorry, Emily, please tell us about the Hoey.
Well, I think that theme is absolutely right, that so many people were welcome. I saw so many friends' bands, and probably more in the sort of between 2003 and 2009 era. So many friends' bands play there, and in fact my own band played there. We were an 11-piece band, and in the front bar we really, really couldn't fit. And, you know, yeah, just had a wonderful time. Really had an amazing time there, and just being able to have such access to a passionate music community as a musician was such a blessing, really.
What was the name of the band?
Oh, I'm not telling.
Oh, okay. I'll have the ad for it if you want it, though. Thank you. And Lex, tell me.
Yeah, I moved to Sydney from Adelaide in 2004, so I only got 5 years with the Hopetoun, but I made the best of those 5 years. And I guess when I think about it, what I really think about the Hoey is this sense of what's going on? Is a sense of discovery, and especially for somebody who was new to Sydney, this sense of being welcomed into this rich kind of subculture that was bubbling out, that was happening all the time and was so present. And as an artist and an arts worker who came from Adelaide, to see this real sense of being in a world-class city where there was this incredible cultural movement going on. And I guess for myself as well, I would go there a lot with female friends, and I'm queer, and for us, in kind of a rock and roll space that, as we know, often dominated by straight men and straight male culture, the Hoey was one of those spaces where we felt comfortable going, and we would go and just discover new things. And also, really, as an expat, we would meet bands from Adelaide, and I had friends from Perth, and we'd always go and see what was coming over from Perth. And there was this kind of nice way that you could, remain connected to the cultural movement of your hometown happening here in Sydney, and then support those acts as well. So it was a really kind of special connection place.
That's so interesting you say that too, Lex. We had, I know at least one of the contributors, Danielle O'Donoghue here, who said the same thing, come up from Melbourne, and same deal, just catch the Melbourne bands and get everybody, connecting to their scene. So it's great, thank you, yeah. I wonder, in terms of what made the scene work, and we're looking backwards before we look forward, but do you have a sense, like, Chit-Chat, you were telling me before your band kind of formed at the Hopetoun. Like, do you want to tell me about what made it work? What was about that place that inspired something like that?
Well, there's 2 questions there. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think, as I said, everyone brought their A game. It felt like somewhere you had, because the quality of the bands you saw was so good. You'd see Box the Jesuit, and even bands like, Rat Cat were doing that sort of pop thing at the same time as the Cruel Sea were playing on a Sunday afternoon without Tex. He'd be the lighting guy or the sound guy. So there was so much quality that you would do the best. But I literally, as you mentioned, there was a band called Pre-Shrunk who we loved, who were incredible players. And at the time, Machine Gun Fellatio wasn't a band. We were just sort of recording a lot of stuff. And Pinky from the band and I were doing some DJ work. And we said, we can support Pre-Shrunk because we knew the guys. And then instead of advertising us as DJs, they advertised us as Machine Gun Fellatio at the Hopetoun. And so we just formed the band. Because we just went, we can't, they've got the ad wrong. So we formed the band, and and from there we obviously we grew and we did our own thing. And when it came time to celebrate a Christmas party, we went under a fake name and went back and played, because it always just felt like home. It felt so comfortable. And I was lucky enough to play in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And what was great is that nothing sort of changed as far as the quality of the bands and the enthusiasm. And to be honest, it was also, the audience was full of other bands. So you'd always see, you would go, if you're at a band, you'd go to the Hopetoun. And luckily for me, I lived on Burke Street for a long time, and you'd wander up and just see who was playing. And so the bands you didn't know that was sometimes surprise you the most. So it was a great scene.
Yeah, find those little extras are always fun too, aren't they? And it never cost. It was mostly free to get in, so it's not as if you.
I would suggest that's why Wednesday was the biggest date, because I'd say that Saturday was probably the one you paid for.
Well, I can tell you from the ads in the wonderful drum media and on the street in the collection here at the State Library. Is that enough plugs in one sentence? That's pretty good, isn't it? The majority of them were free. They started mucking around with a $1 door charge in about 1986. That didn't go down well. And you know, in the 2000s there was a little bit more, but it was always very reasonable for what you got.
And can I just add one little thing? In the 80s and early 90s, as a broke musician, you could live in Surry Hills. I know this seems crazy to say this to you now, but it was where you could, you know, our friends lived in squats, and they, you know, there was, whatever. You could just exist in Surry Hills, which is just ludicrous to think of now.
Actually, we have been going through it before. I made a list of all the venues that were there that you could walk to, starting at King's Cross with the Piccadilly Hotel site, Cardoma, down to French's. Then there was, of course, the Strawberry Hills, the Trade Union Club, the Palace, the Evil Star, the Vulcan, Exit, the Civic. I've probably forgotten some, all within walking distance, all had bands most nights of the week. Most were free-ish, and we all lived there. So you just would get in your stage gear, walk down the street with your guitar or violin to a gig, walk home. It was, or the thing is, you could go to the Hopetoun, start off there. The Hopetoun was the heart of all of those. And you'd go from there, we're going to go here, we'll come back there. It was like just going to endless parties, wasn't it, really? And then you just walk home again, because yes, we could afford it.
Is it true? We had heard too, and we never let the facts get in the way of a good story too much, unless we're relying on the archive, that Rock Against Work was on Dole Day too, so that your Dole check could be cashed at the bar. It's not a bad business idea, is it? I mean, the old rock and roll, the old Dole.
Rock Against Work was just genius, because you could live on the Dole in Surry Hills and go and see bands and play in a band. So what a great thing. Hammered on a Tuesday, watching a band.
And then home.
Fucking heaven.
And then home, like nothing happened, Mum, I'm sure. Oh, yes, very good. Susie, to a band like yours, which, for people that don't know Box the Jesuit, is one of those gems that I think about what we wouldn't have if Box the Jesuit hadn't been contributing to the scene. And again, the bands that sort of surprised me are bands like UMI, and that connection that they really had, I guess, to your energy and your passion and your exploration. What was it about a pub like the Hopetoun that attracted you and Goose and those incredible, not just the cakes, but also the sounds and the outlook, you know?
Well, as I said, I think it was just like you were playing home, but also they allowed us to do whatever we wanted. You could do whatever you wanted. I remember Goose used to stand on the bar and sing, and they're trying to pour beers, and he's walk along the bar. I don't recall him ever going, like, we did some pretty full-on handbills that I look back on and go, what were we thinking?
They were amazing.
They're in the book. Some of them are in the book.
Some in the book.
All copyright cleared, I promise.
But they
sorry, David, publisher, sorry.
They never said, oh, you can't do that. I think they just let you go. And it was the most unglamorous place, but we could be as glamorous as we wanted and do whatever we wanted. I think we used to show porn behind us at some point.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. And it was just, I mean, it was on milk crates. You've got to understand the stage was just milk crates. If trucks went past, it'd move a bit. And you'd be on stage and literally someone would be there. And because I'm short and they were tall, I'd be playing and their face was just there. But once again, I never remember any trouble. I don't recall it at all. It was just... And I think as a single person, male or female, you could walk in there and feel safe, meet someone, have a drink. It was just this incredible thing that we all took for granted. And looking back, it's such a shame it's shut and decaying.
Yeah. Emily, do you remember, and I reckon you and I, maybe we were dancing next to each other. I was dancing to your band, if you tell me what they were.
I dance with a lot of people, so who knows?
What do you think, what was something about, What do you think made the scene work, particularly at that time in the 2000s when lots of other stuff is going on? There's lots more competition. You know, the beginnings of people were meeting on MySpace instead. By the way, the Hopetoun MySpace page is still up if you go down by the Internet Archive, and it's delightful. So.
Look, I've been thinking a lot about this question recently in the context of my new work, and you know, I went to Bad Bunny like a week ago, and I was thinking, like, what makes this show exceptional is actually the people, and I think that is true for most great venues and festivals and places we go, is actually the audience is such a critical part of the experience, and I think sometimes we forget that it's actually the community around it that makes it what it is, because, you know, bands on stage is one part, and the owners and the culture there, but without the people there contributing, showing up, you know, falling in love, breaking up, getting back together, you know, finding new friends, making new community. Without that, it's just a building, you know, and I think that's really the critical part for the Hopetoun, and just shown by everyone showing up tonight, is that it's actually all about the audience.
Absolutely, on a rainy Monday night and everything, yeah. And did you go as a punter a lot as well as playing there?
Absolutely.
Excellent, fantastic. Lex, what do you reckon?
You know, I sometimes feel like perhaps that sense of the countercultural was a bit more unified at that time, and maybe the benefit of having more socially conservative times is that the countercultural is a little bit more unified. But also we had unifying resources. So things like street press, I think we really can't underestimate the impact that had. And, you know, and I also used to write music reviews for Queer Street Press, and I used to work in queer arts and queer festivals. And the real value of having a queer street press, I was talking to some young queer musicians in their early 20s recently, and we were talking about the street press, and they said, "I'm sorry, what is this? What is this street press you speak of? It was pressed on the street?" I'm like, no, free media for the queer community. Like, it really, I think that made such a difference. But then also, I reflect on how that unified cultural movement was also kind of monocultural in a sense. Like, as beautiful as all of these images are, and beautiful as our reflections of the Hoey and the great, gorgeous times that we had, it's very much a kind of Anglo-Aussie kind of sense of culture, and that kind of larrikin leaning into that Aussie identity, and it is really a very white space. And I think at that time, in the inner city suburbs, that probably was more representative of our demographics, and we did kind of engage in that more kind of monocultural experience of Sydney's culture. But that's changed, and I think that is part of the reason why we don't necessarily feel venues in the same way anymore.
Yeah.
For all right reasons as well, I must say, yeah.
Well, that's the thing too, isn't it? When we're looking backwards, there are some things that we maybe shouldn't replicate. I think OH&S for a start. You know, it officially says, although I went past the other day, it worked kind of well. Oh, another young man, undress. I went past the other day, and you know, you used to be able to see out the front on the tiles 189, which was the capacity. I'm very unsure they stuck to that. And I'm also a little bit worried about the audio health of the bar staff, because there was no suggestion that anybody was looking after their ears or their well-being in many ways. Their RSA, what? Don't know. But if we had to sort of think about those ideas of the time, to kind of go from the past and come to the present and maybe even the future at some point, we had to reuse some of those ideas or some of those techniques or just some of those initiatives, because you're right, people coming together was super important too. And it wasn't just the musicians, that's right, it was the bookers, it was the journos, it was the barflies, it was all those people coming together. Is there any of those things from that time you reckon we could rehash or reuse? Chit Chat, what do you reckon?
It's so hard because it was such a complete ecosystem, is what you're saying, and I don't ever recall being paid. I think part of that is the fact that whatever little money we got, it was so expensive to record, we would throw it towards that. But I don't remember, it wasn't about getting paid, which is hard for a lot of people to understand. You did your own posters. You made your own posters. You'd sneak, someone had a photocopier they worked at. It was printing out obscenities at 11 o'clock at night before the boss came back or whatever. You'd be out at 12 o'clock at night, you'd be sticking them up. You'd do all your own graffiti. You had street press, so everybody read the street press, so it was contained, so you knew that if you advertised in that street press, you had a chance of getting an audience. And then, of course, you had Double J was on your side, eventually became Triple J, and then you could be broadcast to the whole of the country as it spread out. So it was, everyone was working towards making music happen. We had less distractions, and I think that's the biggest thing when we come to the future. I've got teenage girls, and they love music, and they go to shows, and they're obsessed with music, but they have also a million other things that they can be pulled sideways by. So I'd love to see that move into the future, but it was, as I said, a complete ecosystem, and that should be celebrated. But how do we recreate that now? I don't know. I guess it's, maybe it exists with social media and still with shows. But not wanting to make money seems counterintuitive, but doing it for the art, dressing like you're playing as a rock star to a stadium to 200 people, awesome. That's the way to do it. I still think it's the way to do it. If you're going to play to 5 people, treat it like it's 100,000. Give them the best show they've ever had. And if you follow those sort of guidelines, then hopefully you'll get noticed. I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Go back to work as an accountant during the day to fund it.
Do what you have to do to afford to do what you want to do, I think. Mm-hmm. Don't be ashamed. I worked in a toy store while I was doing Bragg. I was getting naked on stage, and I worked at Hopetoun in the city.
I remember you wearing nothing but Winnie the Pooh. Is that where that came from?
Yeah. But can I tell you, when I left Hobbyco, they had a massive model train set, which was there for years. And 3K, or Roscoe, who's probably in the audience here, we went out one night and we sprayed Vrag, which was our first band, on a wall, which was there for years. And they actually made a model replica on their train set at Hobbyco with me in my Hobbyco outfit spraying Vrag on a wall. So there you go.
Lovely. We'll get those straight to the library, straight to the pool room. Susie, what do you reckon of those times? Are there some of those Hoey ideas, apart from the cakes?
Look, I've thought about this a lot when you sort of said what questions. And I'd love to say yes, it could be recreated. But I think the thing is, Goose had a theory back then that, because there were so many people from Newcastle, from Adelaide, from Melbourne, all came to Sydney, and he thought they were like stray dogs. And then they found the Hopetoun, they found the music scene, and they formed a pack where they belonged. Mm-hmm. I don't know that people would do that anymore, because I don't know that people are that sociable anymore. I also think now, back then, we had to work hard. Every gig, and you're right, the calibre of bands, I never saw a bad band that didn't put in 100% at the Hopetoun. I sort of think now people want to be famous in 5 minutes, and they can from their bedroom. They don't want to put in the hard yards like we did, and we didn't do it to be famous. We did it because we loved it.
Packed at the Hopetoun was famous.
That was famous, yeah. And I have thought a lot about it, and I really hope things could be turned around. And I know a lot of young people are going to gigs, and that's fantastic. But I just don't know that it would ever work like that again. I think because people are too on their phones, they don't have to leave home anymore.
Also, kids don't drink.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Kids don't drink. The booze industry has lost, I think, 900 billion in the last 4 years because kids don't drink. And also, a sad statistic is that hospitality has dropped 20% in the last 2 years, which is frightening. I don't like giving the horrible numbers, but there's other things at play rather than the quality of music, because my daughters play me music and they blows my head off. I hear amazing stuff still being made, but how does it translate? But if they all went into it without thinking about the money and the fame and just did great work, then I think people still rise. Look at Bad Bunny. I mean, you mentioned that. Look, he went, fuck you, Trump.
Yeah.
Look at that. He was a guy and he's the most streamed artist in the world. No one understands if you're not, from Puerto Rico, but it's about the vibe. He just puts in an energy wherever he's playing, and I think that's a great. So hopefully, good things still rise.
Yeah, Emily, this is your bread and butter. What do you think in terms of what we can reuse, what we can, or is it happening? I mean, it could even be that we just don't know because we don't have. Marg, are you busy? Could you start the street press again, please? Like drum, I'd pick up a drum tomorrow.
Look, I think it's an interesting thing about how we reflect on today's current music industry and music communities. And a lot of people, say, like, I can't tell you how, like, I've been in my job 2.5 years, and I think I've heard the call for street press, like, to be reinstated, like, almost weekly, because people want to know where to find gigs. But I think the problem's deeper than that, and I think there's a lot of issues that we've already touched on, like affordability. Where are those communities? And I think the scene is doing really great, incredible work. There are some amazing musicians coming out of Sydney and New South Wales, and audiences showing up. It's just not in the way that we understand it through a Hopetoun lens, and I think there's plenty to be excited about. And, you know, like I was just reading today about a jewellery store on Parramatta Road that's hosting, like, literally punk gigs. So, like, you know, I think the way we understand community and music culture has changed. The way it's not necessarily as, you know, having these jewels of the crown like the Hopetoun. It's much more micro. It's much more like, you know, these micro communities happening around, you know, record stores or, you know, smaller spaces, and I think they're really important and for that local community. So yeah, I think, like, I try not to look back too much, and I think there's a lot to learn, and I'm so grateful for the music history that New South Wales has, but I also think we need to base ourselves in sort of the culture that we have right now, and I think there's a lot of great things going on, and I'm really optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Lex, and here in Sydney.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that, you know, our cohort of musicians living in Sydney has changed, music culture has changed, audience culture has changed, and music spaces are changing, and we need to find them, look after them, invest in them, build them up, and protect them, because that's what happens. Things evolve, and that evolution is taking place. But having said that, the greatest threat to Sydney's cultural life is chronic unaffordability in the property market, and it's a serious issue that is so thorny and requires all levels of government to really just flip the script, because it's going to be eating the soul of our city alive. I mean, it already is eating the soul of our city alive. So we're never going to have any of these good things again if we can't co-locate creative workers, artists, audiences, all in inner city places. That happens with affordable housing, getting artists into affordable housing, raising the rate of the dole, for fuck's sake, and making sure that we reinvest some of our government funds into arts and culture, directly into artists, to subsidise their costs, to make sure that they can just spend time practising their craft. Once upon a time, yes, you could be an artist on the dole and that was enough. It's not enough anymore, so we need to be looking at how we can support artists' incomes so they can still live in our city and be part of our community.
Yeah.
I just want to add a very boring thing to the whole thing, is that public liability insurance, if you're a venue owner, and people would know about this, is just fucking everybody. It's like between 5 and 10 times it's gone up. Like a huge rate that it's gone up in the last 5 years. So, you know, we had Krista, who's here, on a motorbike come into the Hopetoun Hotel. We had dick cakes and whatever. You could do whatever you want. A venue would be terrified by anything like that now, because, you know, it's the public liability is really, it's tens and tens of thousands of dollars for each venue, and you've got to think about whether it's worth it.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I guess apologising later rather than asking in advance, it's not really going to work, is it? In terms of, we talked a lot about, and we obviously got to focus on musicians because we've got musicians here, but what about the other people that made that ecosystem work? Do you have some memories? There was one that you were a little bit less supportive of, who we did speak to in the book, by the way. Hello, Sharky, if you're here, Tim. But those other people that made the place work, do you have some reflections on those and that role of creative workers who are not just on stage? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think I talked about it before with the ecosystem. It was the street press mixed with the radio, mixed with the venues. I think especially when grunge broke, I think the Hopetoun became a bit of a focus for the record companies. They're going, shit, we need some of that. We better go to the, you know, and a lot of bands got signed through that. I mean, it was an ecosystem. That's it. It was fully formed, and that's what I like. And there's been a great festival in Newcastle. I live in Newcastle now. Called West End Block Fest. This blueprint I find fascinating, because the problem with festivals is the public liability. The problem with festivals is it rains, and getting people out. So what they've done is this amazing thing where a group of venues got together and said, let's put on a festival with 100 bands in one day, local bands, right? You get a pass, cheap, 100 bands in one day, the pass is like 70 or 80 bucks. And they're all at all the pubs. So you go to the pub's already got a toilet, it's already got a security guy, already got a stage, already got a sound system, And it's the greatest vibe, and it should be replicated all over this country because it's such a great idea and solves a lot of the problems that we have. It makes you see bands you wouldn't see normally because, you know, you walk in and there's an Afro-Cuban DJ and then you're seeing a thrash band and then you can, if you don't like it, you just move on because there's like, Matt, how many venues? 11. There's 11 venues in this circuit, so they're all having bands all day. And that idea took me back a little bit to the Hopetoun because it was people wanting to see music, not necessarily just going to see the headline. They're here for all of it and just to enjoy music.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I don't think that's the answer to your question.
No,
but it
no,
sounded
it is.
good. It sounded really good.
No, it is, but it's also all of those other people that are feeding in, right? So even when you're talking about a venue, I think about one of the things we were talking about with the Hopetoun was not just the ecosystem in the venue, but around it. You know, so Johnny's Fish and Chips next door.
Johnny's Fish and Chips.
You know.
Terry the Pieman.
Tell me about... Now, Tex Perkins told us about Terry the Pieman, and I can't find a written record to him. So I just want to know if anybody else could see
He died
Terry
just
the
recently.
Pieman. Tell me
We don't know
about
who
him.
he is.
Yeah, tell me about
I
him.
thought someone put on Facebook that he died.
Oh, only True Stuff's on Facebook. Tell me about Terry the Pieman. Oh, did he? So what do you remember of Terry the Pieman, Susie?
I just remember always out on the footpath, he'd come out, he was out there setting up. He was just always there, same as Johnny's Fish and Chips. We're talking about that before. You'd go in there and there was Johnny with the oiliest hair you've ever seen. But it was that once again was all part of the whole thing. And that weird shop across the road that when
Andy's.
you walked in the door.
With that music. What
yes,
was that music?
what was that?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. That was weird because you'd race across there to get something and you'd walk in, that was all...
Well, I was usually on acid, so for me, it was like, where have I ended up? And I'd forget. Somehow I'd forget every time and I'd go back in there.
And there was the bar stuff. I was at my hairdresser's the other day and she informed me she worked downstairs at the bar. And then I've been reading on Facebook all these people putting up, I worked at the bar. I think everyone worked there at some point. And then at the end of the night was like I was reminded on Facebook, just... get the fuck out, just get the fuck out. That was to go. The barman and everyone would go. It was just the whole thing.
You found this out? Didn't Paul Kelly used to live upstairs? Was it Paul Kelly?
Half of the band lived upstairs. Yeah, Paul never lived upstairs as far as we can tell. Paul hasn't answered our calls. So if you hear Paul, feel free to contribute. But the story went that he couldn't get a gig at the Hopetoun. And the reason was, it was these people, again, and we were so lucky to be able to speak to not just musicians, but bookers, so people like Sharky, Millie Millgate. Millie Millgate was booking when, is Millie here? Oh, hello,
Back
Millie. I also want to be Millie when I grow up. But Millie was this incredible woman. So I was a baby journalist, and I would go there because I couldn't afford anywhere else. And if you're a journo, you get in places for free, you get records for free. So that's what we do it. And I remember hearing about Millie, and I had mates who were music, oh, Millie, but Millie was just the brains, the absolute brains of knowing how to get the place to work. And I think sometimes Mel before her as well, and there was Lauren after her, and that we can sort of think that places like this just happened because it had fairy dust on it, or it was just, it was just this special sauce. But it was the work of people like Millie as well, who knew when to say yes, importantly knew when to say no. And the right no, or not yet, not now. And the story with Paul Kelly was, as far as Sharky got a bit annoyed about it, but because he had a residency down the road at the Surry Hills, there was a bit of a gentleman's agreement with all the bookers, so that if somebody was playing at one, you couldn't have them playing at yours because you didn't want to cut each other's lunch. And apparently Steve Connolly and everybody else were upstairs. They were all hanging out at the Hoey, and Paul really wanted to play. And finally, Sharky and the owner of the Straub just went, yeah, you can have him. We don't know what this guy's going to be like. Off you go, off he goes. And he played, there was a recording, you can still find it, for Edge of the Wedge, that David Art Wales was the host for. I think David's here too somewhere. There's a whole recording from the Hopetoun of Paul Kelly and the Colour Girls, a really early series, It is in the ABC archive for a lot of money. It might be on YouTube for less money, I'm just saying. So all of these things that sort of contributed to making the place work. What do you think, Emily? Do you remember any of those extra contributors, those extra workers?
Yeah, look, I was pretty green at the time and not sure I was necessarily seeing who was around. But if you think about, people like Millie who have come out of the being a part of the Hopetoun in that way. Like the amount of incredibly talented people who had a strong love and relationship with that venue, I think says a lot about just how connected and that community of not just audiences and not just artists, but that business community and people who just wanted to make cool stuff happen.
Absolutely, yeah, and just said yes, I guess, or turned a blind eye, maybe. Yeah. Lex, what do you think?
Yeah, it is that thing, isn't it? The music scenes are an ecosystem, and they're made up of all of these different suppliers and characters in those supply chains. And I guess that's the thing that, from a city perspective, we often think about is how do we ensure that those things stay connected? Because that's the real risk, is that as things become more dispersed across Greater Sydney and people can't access certain pockets of the city that are out of reach to them, that you lose that ecosystem. And as we know, any ecosystem that kind of falls out of balance ends up spiralling out of control. So it is that thing about making sure that we're addressing all of the framework that goes into supporting a music scene.
Yeah, and providing all those opportunities too, you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
spoke to Mush as well, who was, again, you dig into the archive and you can see a little ad on the Hoey ads, sort of around the early 90s, for Mush's sausage sizzle. And Mush was getting a side hustle. I think he was working behind the bar at one point. There was a side hustle of making special sausages out the back. Sounds dodgy, I promise it wasn't. But, so the side hustle that's happening, he was also doing putting the posters up around the city, and explained in really great detail the art of picking where you're going to put a pole poster. And so, because you want it in an intersection, but if you know that people are on the bus in the intersection, then you want it kind of high enough up so you can see it when you're on the bus, but not low enough so you're going to miss it, Like it was really all of those little touches that we love, It
was also, when you put your own out, who you would cover up.
Oh, that was a big thing, yes.
Never cover a Box the Jesuit artwork.
But you'd also
other
have,
bands,
you
yeah,
have
you
to
fuck 'em.
time it, because if you put them up too early, someone had come around and put them up after you.
It was a whole thing, yeah.
It was a whole thing. And then once we were playing at Mossman and we're putting them up, next minute the police pull up, they made us rip up every single poster into little bits and pull them down. And it cost a lot to get them done, even though it was just two.
You never paid.
But it would hurt you when you'd put them up and you'd go home and the next day and there's some shit bands put it all over your posters. No, we'd never do it to...
No, that's lovely. I would never do it to you guys. I loved your band so much. And I love Millie's here. That's a beautiful... Getting back to the point earlier, that everyone gave a fuck. Now, Millie gave a fuck, and that's important. And she would say no when it was the right time, as she said. And that's all gets back to that ecosystem where every single person cared. If you were writing for Drum Media or on the street, you wanted to write the best article that had ever been written and broadcast a band. Everybody cared.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm keeping an eye on time. I think that, is it Dan? I'm sorry, is right in the middle of my time. So there we go. That's beautiful. We've got just a little bit left. If I could, just looking to the future now, and this is a bit of a curly one, so you might have a crystal ball or not, but I can see that it's not just people who were there. I know that there are people here who missed it but want to know more. I can see people like, I've got a lovely student here, Twisty, who's studying what young people now are, what their version of the Hopetoun is, I guess, what it could be, what social media could be. For maybe, I hope young people are getting a bit algorithmically tired now. I've got students who are saying to me, have you heard of this thing called broadcast radio? Well, you can turn it on and they don't know what you heard, so they're not going to give you something else, but someone else still picks it for you. Isn't that great, So I wonder what the Hopetoun of the future might be. I wonder, it might not be in one place, it might not be in the inner city, it might be Western Sydney or Newcastle, it might be a whole bunch of things spread out. Could you have a crystal ball? What do you think the Hopetoun of the future might be?
I still think there's a place for live music. And I dropped my 15-year-old daughter off at a warehouse space in Newcastle the other night, and I walked in and there was a punk band playing with 100 kids. They were pogoing and the singer was climbing the light stand, and I went, and I could have bawled. It was just like, my God, I was so excited to see it, because I worry about all the things that you're talking about. Kids are moving greatly back to physical, the demand for vinyl, cassettes, CDs. CDs are great for kids because my kids don't buy them so much, but I know a lot of kids do because it's physical, and at the moment you can get them for a couple of bucks, whereas vinyl's gone through the roof. And if you go into a record store, and I guarantee you there's a bunch, my people are here, I see, it's a bunch of guys and 16-year-old girls. It's so weird. You go into Greville Record in Melbourne, you walk in, it's exactly that. There's a bunch of grey-haired guys debating over what punk means, and a bunch of young girls buying CDs.
Teenage girls have been supporting the music industry for a very long time.
100%.
No, I'm not
Yes.
doubting that. I'm just saying it's great to
Yes.
see. It's great to see physical, and I've got a huge vinyl collection, and the kids come over and they sit and they pore over, and it's great. It's wonderful. So there is a love for that, and they're starting to think maybe this linear radio thing might work, but, we'll see what happens.
Good way.
I also think you've got to have venues that want it to work. And somewhere like Mosh Pit in Newtown is fantastic. You go there, the guys there, the heart's in the right place. They have pretty much, I think, 7 nights a week stuff, new artist night, all of that. It's tiny, but it's a great vibe. We can go and see 3 completely different bands there. It's good. But are there venues that aren't just obsessed with making money now? And that's the whole thing. I think that's, if there were venues that put that up, like if someone could just open up the Hopetoun again and do it. So, yeah. Look, I'm hopeful, and yes, there is the audience, the young people, they're still there, but it's all just changed so much.
And us oldies too. I mean, Rock Against If somebody put on a gig on a Tuesday afternoon, but so I could go and have a nap and then still go and do pick-up afterwards and do homework, I think I would weep with joy. Sorry, Emily.
Yeah, look, I think it is happening. I think there are a lot of great venues doing great things. It's not necessarily centred around the same kind of heartland of that it was, and it's a bit more spread out and diversified across Sydney and further across New South Wales, like amazing scene in Wollongong, amazing scene in Newcastle, lots of great things happening. I think like the thing to remember is that, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but if you don't go out 4 nights a week in Sydney, then like you probably don't know what's going on. And like just to the people in this room, think about that there are people who do that and they are connected and there's a great culture going on. And just because we don't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, wonderful, yeah. And let's just celebrate it. Let's talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think like have hope. There are young people doing incredible things, and like just because you're not necessarily across it doesn't mean it's not there. There's a really strong heart to this city.
Love it, thank you. Lex, what do you think?
Yeah, and I'm really excited about the kinds of, ad hoc and community spaces and things that are happening off-grid and underground that we oldies are completely unaware of. And there is this real kind of still this sense of, young people are resourceful and culture always finds a way. So we just have to start looking at it through new eyes rather than trying to recreate this nostalgic thing that we've, in many regards lost. And I think that's probably we will find that the culture will surprise us. There will be a new version of it that rocks up.
Yeah, and I think too, thank you. I think too, though, about how many of these musicians are still playing, right? Or coming back, or should come back. Please come back. You played some more gigs a little bit, didn't you? You just started playing a little bit. Did I imagine that?
Oh, we did a Reformation show, but that was very different.
Yeah.
We did the Horden Pavilion for the first time, which was amazing, and the fact that we got back together, did 10 rehearsals, and did 4 shows, and didn't kill each other was a wonderful thing. We got through it. It was wonderful to reform, and also doing the Hopetoun back in close to Surry Hills, close to the Hopetoun. So many memories there of seeing shows, but. Can I just say one thing though? If the government, people whinge about the government, if they could do one thing, I think for venues, it's the public liability. I think that's the one thing. When I talk to venue owners, it's the things that crippling getting bands in. And if it was easier to get bands in, I think people would want to see them.
Susie, you did though too, didn't you? You played a little bit. Did I imagine that? Or was that one of those things on Facebook that I saw that wasn't real?
Yeah, I hadn't actually played live for 19 years, and then I was asked last December, Goose's 2 brothers in Adelaide decided to do a gig and asked me to go. So I practiced in my bedroom for 6 weeks.
Got the
picked
cake
up the
mix
violin
out?
and went, oh God, I can't do this. And I got better. And yeah, flew to Adelaide and did the show, and I loved it. I felt like I was home. I do think even like some of the pubs in Adelaide, the scene there is some great venues, putting on some Emily, like what's it called, the Emily?
Grace Emily.
Yes.
Grace Emily Adelaide.
Yeah, that one, that's great little venue, fantastic.
I swear they haven't cleaned any of the shelves since I moved in the early 2000s. They certainly haven't vacuumed under the pool table. I was there recently.
Just adds to it. It was great.
But that's a wonderful thing too. I think too we can talk about young people and music, but I love that so many of the people we got to speak to, Greg and myself and Brian, in digging into all of this, and I acknowledge Dom too, who helped put the book together, was there's so many artists whose careers have continued. And who still make art, and who still, Lo Carmen you've seen, Kathy Green you've seen, some guy Tex is still banging on, UMI is, like all of these artists, again, Paul, I believe he did all right, but all these people who are still going on, So I wonder too if the Hopetoun is not just for the young folk, but if there's, I think something like the Gasoline Pony or something like that, those venues where we've got artists still making music and audiences that want to come out and still do it too.
And I was saying to Em before we came on before, like if we're thinking this 30 years ago was kind of maybe the heyday of the Hoey, right? So in the 1950s, could they ever have imagined the Hoey? Like they never would have, right? So in the 90s, there was no way we could imagine what the music community might look like now. And we have to have hope that it's going to keep reimagining itself, right?
Thanks for listening to our final episode of History Lab. It's our last for a few weeks. Up next, we have a very special new series produced in partnership with the Australian Historical Association. It's called Field Notes, and it's a series of 5 conversations that offer an intimate look at who is making Australian history today and the kinds of questions that they're asking. What are the passions and preoccupations that drive historians into the archives, and what do they seek there? Ranging from Chinese Australian history to feminist, environmental and military history, these conversations bring you the A-team of historical inquiry in Australia today, helping us understand how history is made and what it can offer us in the present.